And back to you, Chris.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you always for the warm welcome that you bring everybody here. Now, I would like to introduce our speaker for today, Dr. Stephanie Hoops, who is the National Director of United for Alice at United Way of Northern New Jersey, who's going to provide a brief high-level overview of some of the national data and trends in the latest Alice report. Dr. Hoops, welcome once again.
Wonderful. Great to be here. Thanks for having me. And I really appreciate the thought and care that you all took to put together today's presentation with data, as well as hearing what's actually happening in the community and in Pierce County. So I'm looking forward to the whole presentation as well. So to get started, as Nate said, we all know Alice. The acronym is Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. I'm going to be sharing some very compelling data, but let's take a minute and think about the people that we know in our lives who are Alice. Alice is helping keep our economy running smoothly. So as you came to work today, you probably ran into many Alice workers, and on your way home, you probably will as well. So think about the transit driver picking your kid up at childcare. Maybe you're picking up a prepared meal. Think about who made that. Are you going to stop at the bank? The bank teller may be Alice. So there are just so many folks that keep our lives running smoother, make it a little easier for us, and yet are struggling to support their own families. And, for me, it's even closer to home. Many of us have been Alice. I've got two young kids in the work world, and they're struggling to find an apartment that they can afford near their job that doesn't pay a lot. And so I'm sure that you all have Alice in your family, senior parents trying to retire, neighbors. So think about those folks and their stories as we go through the data. And just a word on where the data is coming from. Uh, United for Alice is a national research organization. Chris, there's some text that goes with this one too. I think it might be another click. Um, oh, so just a word on United for Alice. So we've developed some of the most accurate measures of financial hardship. We started off as a pilot in Northern New Jersey and now are a national research organization and often credited as one of the most accurate measures of financial hardship in the country. So this is our national overview. 13% of households are considered struggling, financial hardship, according to the federal poverty level, our official measure of financial hardship. But when you look at what it actually costs to live and work in every county, another 29% of households are struggling. So 54 million households, 41% of households below the Alice threshold in our country. It is a completely different magnitude of financial hardship than the federal poverty level is revealing. And it's so important as we think about what's needed in terms of program, policy, and what we can all do. So the first step is recognizing the level of financial hardship and how we calculate it. And the next is, what can be done. So this figure is one of my favorites. This is what kind of sums up our work, and this is the average for a family of four in Washington state. So the blue bar is that household survival budget for a family of four, and it includes just those basics of rental housing, family childcare, food at home, the running cost of a car, basic health care, a small technology line, miscellaneous for cost overruns, and then Alice pays taxes. So on average in Washington state for a family of four with two kids in childcare, it adds up to almost $110,000. You compare that to two of the most common occupations in the state. That's the yellow bar here, a cook and a bank teller. That adds up to $78,000. So you have this gap between what the costs are in the ground and what a full-time, year-round, two adults working earn. And it's that gap of why we have so many Alice households. The gray bar on the far right is the federal poverty level, and you can see how inadequate that is for capturing what's happening in Washington state. That federal poverty number is the same across the country, so $31,000 whether you're in Seattle or Manhattan or Mississippi. So it really does not capture those differences that we all know exist. But this sums up what United for Alice does is we look at those costs in every county and then we compare it to local income. So costs vary, but so do wages. And we're able to capture both of those dimensions. So next I wanted to talk about tracking Alice over time. So first looking at costs, we see that the cost that Alice, the cost of the goods and services that Alice buys on a regular basis, we capture in the Alice Essentials Index. That's the medium blue line here. But our traditional measure is the consumer price index, and that's the dark blue line. And that's all the goods and services that people of all incomes purchase on a regular basis. And I do want to add folks living in urban areas for CPI, whereas the Alice Essentials Index is just those things in the survival budget for consumers across the country. And we see in Washington state, those are increasing faster, not only than Alice Essentials nationally, which is the yellow line, but certainly faster than CPI nationally as well. So on the one hand, those core things, just those basics that Alice is buying are increasing faster. But we also look at wages, and we have seen some wage increases, especially coming out of the pandemic. And yet they're not enough to keep up with these basic increases. So in the next slide, we see how that plays out in terms of the numbers. So across the country, we see poverty flat. That's the dark blue line over the last 15 years, 2010 to 2024, and the dotted line extends through, economic downturns, recovery, pandemic, different presidential administrations. It stayed pretty flat. During that same period, we see the number of Alice households ticking up. And that's not captured if you only look at the federal poverty level. And yet, so much of what we hear on the ground is this increasing hardship, more folks struggling just to afford those basics. And we're able to capture that here. The trend is similar in Washington state and in Pierce County. So again, the value of adding the Alice measure to fully understand what's happening. So we capture a lot of demographics, and I encourage you to check out our website. Here, we're looking at a breakdown by age. And so the figure is showing not only the number of households in each of these age categories, but then the percent that are poverty, the dark blue, and Alice that are the medium blue. And so it pops out that our youngest households have a very high rate below the Alice threshold, 64%, and yet it's actually a small number of households. At the other end of the age spectrum, we have our seniors. They also have a very high rate below the Alice threshold, 47%. And it's the largest group in the state, and it's the fastest growing Alice group. This is a trend that we're seeing across the country and one that we really want to raise up. So part of the explanation, and next slide, Chris, is looking at the survival budget compared to Social Security. And speaking of inflation, so that Social Security payments are ticked up by a variation of CPI. And yet most seniors are relying on Social Security to afford those household basics. And the blue bar is that household survival budget. And you can see how much it's grown from 2010 to 2024. And Social Security is also increasing, but certainly not getting near enough to cover even that basic household survival budget. And so we see a relatively small number of Alice households in poverty, but a much higher percent that are Alice based on that mismatch. So another set of data that we are very targeted on are Alice in the workforce. We have been tracking for a long time Alice by occupation, and that's still on our website, but this is exciting for us. This is the first year that we've done Alice by industry sector. And so this is across the US. It is similar in Washington State, that we see Alice in all sectors. Some have a higher proportion of Alice workers below that Alice threshold, but it's really important to take a minute and recognize Alice is throughout our economy. Alice is throughout our businesses, and not to make assumptions of who is struggling. So even in industries where you think there might not be Alice workers, professional and scientific services, finance and insurance, you still have a proportion of workers who are below that Alice threshold. And then we do see much higher percentages in industries like retail trade and accommodation and food service. So a new thing to dig into and check out on the website is Alice by industry sector. And we still have the great data on Alice by occupation. Another thing I wanted to mention is we did a special topic last fall on Alice and the dental divide. And so it's a really great example of how income plays out in places that you might not even think about. And so digging into oral health, we were able to see that almost a third of Alice households across the country, and in the West Central census region, had to forego dental care due to cost. And that's very different than households above the Alice threshold, less than 10%. So one of the things that we like to do is pull out that difference in experience. The average of below 20% makes you think, oh, it's not too bad. But when you look above and below the Alice threshold and see a third of respondents, so this is a third of adults, are foregoing dental care, this is the way you enter your whole body, starts with your mouth. And if you're not able to take care of that, there are so many further implications from heart conditions and cancer detection to your general health, as well as your confidence in a job interview or going to work. So we just wanted to kind of bring home, you can dig into the report, and we have a great data story that goes with it, but to make sure that we're aware that there are implications for this beyond, kind of the top surface of what you might think in terms of financial hardship. Another new piece of our website is the Alice Disaster Assistance Tracker. And I've really been thinking about Washington State and the disaster tracker in light of the wildfires happening in the western part of Washington. Alice is impacted even more by a disaster, doesn't have that safety net, that cushion to withstand damage to their home or their car. Missing work for even a couple days can set Alice back significantly. And some of the devastation that's happening in the wildfires would take months, if not years, for Alice to recover from. So this tool, the Disaster Assistance Tracker, has FEMA data paired up with Alice data from 2010 to present. And so we have different types of individual FEMA assistance, as you can filter by the disaster, by the year, the geography. So this is looking at Washington State in 2026. It's updated almost weekly, but that's dependent on what FEMA reports. So sometimes, obviously, there's a lag when you're in the midst of a disaster. But we encourage you to check that, because it helps track track approvals as well as denials. And so it gives you a sense of the magnitude of the number of households that are struggling, and We also report the amount of FEMA assistance, so you can see if there's a mismatch between, those payments. If they're $1,000 and yet you look at the extent of damage and it's well more than that. And if you are seeing, 50% denials, what how much more is that community going to need to fill in and meet that need? And one thing just to kind of highlight with what's going on in the data, we can see that the kind of appeal rate. So if you've applied for assistance, you were denied, and then you want to appeal that is very low chance. So one of the best things that communities can do, United Ways, community stakeholders, is to get folks to fill out that form correctly the first time. That improves their chances of getting that initial approval because sending it in half done and then trying to get it looked at again is not very successful. So just think about folks in some of the worst moments of their lives. They are not going to have at their fingertips all the data that you might need to fill out the form. So when agencies can help, who have had, especially those who have had experience filling out the forms, can make a big difference for people getting that assistance and getting it quickly. And then I wanted to shift with something that we're working on this year and hoping you all can help us, is that how do we tell Alice's story? And one of the things that I think really makes a difference in people hearing it and wanting to help is using some asset framing. So starting with your community strengths, thinking about, Alice is an important part of our community. What's going well? Why do we care about Alice? And then building on that understanding of Alice's challenges, and the Alice tools and data can help with that. And then think who else in the community can be engaged in this kind of conversation. Expand it outside, maybe your traditional group of people who focus on financial hardship, because there's something all of us can do. Companies can make a difference, community colleges, government at all levels, from school boards to city councils, county councils, not just your state legislature and federal officials. So think about the diversity of partners that can be involved. We often see credit unions and transit agencies wanting to get in there too. So bring in more partners, think about, why Alice is important, and then follow up with the challenges. And ultimately, when basic needs are met, so much more is possible for an entire community. So it's really in everybody's interest. So I encourage you to kind of think about this asset framing and how we can, put a good foot forward and galvanize even more support. To do that, I've got a couple tools I wanted to share with you. One is our Alice in Action page, which is been building over the last few years, and we've got all kinds of examples of communities and stakeholders using Alice in their work. So you can search by geography, but you can also search by topic. So if you're doing working in the housing field, you can see what others are doing, transportation, childcare. So a great resource for you. We also have our Washington State page, and you can dig into all the data that I shared earlier and much more. And you can dig down into your county, but you can also dig below that into zip code, towns and municipalities, and so really understand what's happening at your local level. We also have the ability to combine geographies. So if you're doing something in Pierce County and a neighboring county, you can select both of those counties and see what your region looks like. And we also have a great new county report where you can download all the data that you select on the county report page and it saves it as a PDF, which you can then, send to somebody electronically or print out, take to your next meeting. A really nice feature so that you can share out your local county data easily and in nicely formatted. So yeah, just reinforcing that those county reports. We love the maps, so dig into your, see how neighboring geographies compare, zip codes, and I also want to highlight the legislative districts. We have probably our two most used tools are the income status tool and the legislative district tool. So if your work involves advocacy, check out the legislative district tool. It has the upper and lower chamber in Washington as well as your congressional district, and it breaks down the constituencies above and below the Alice threshold. We also do a breakdown by race ethnicity. It's very compelling when a legislator sees, oh yes, Alice is in my district and Alice votes. So make sure you bring that home. And then the Alice Income Status tool is a way to very easily put in your geography, a household combination, and get the household survival budget for that combination. And then if you wanted to use that for determining eligibility for a program or tracking folks' income status over time, it tells you whether a household is poverty, Alice, or above the Alice threshold. And then lastly is our economic viability dashboard. And this is a great tool, especially for folks who are doing planning or strategy, that you can dig into your state or your local community and look at how you're doing in terms of work, housing, and community resources. So three different dimensions, and figure out, is our community stronger on good jobs, or is our community stronger on affordable housing? Rarely do we find places that are strong in both, but it helps you understand what's working, what's you want to build on, and where the gaps are, and what you want to fill in. And especially understanding some of those community resources can make a difference. I want to point out that this tool has an action planner so that you can leave it with some concrete data points that you want to tackle and pair them with promising practices. So examples from across the country that are being tried and might spur you to special ideas, but you're the experts in your community. But these are data that can help you understand more and think about promising practices from other places. So with that, I hope that you'll join us on social media, United for Alice. We're on Facebook, Instagram, X, and YouTube. So got lots going on, and would love to have you join us. So thanks so much today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hoops. You always give a fantastic presentation, and it's fun to see how Alice continues to evolve year after year with even more important data for us to be able to follow. It is now my pleasure to introduce Donna Panapinto, the President and CEO of United Way of Pierce County. Donna, it's all you.
Great. Thank you, Chris. And thank you, Nathan and Dr. Hoops. And it's so wonderful to see all of you here today. Thank you for being a part of this town hall. Dr. Hoops shared with you the trends nationally, and we know that locally we felt, all of those same economic pressures. So I'm just going to jump right into some of the data. First off, the affordability crisis, it's real. We all know it's real. There's a constant battle to make ends meet. Alice families are forced every single day to make really tough choices. Paying a heating bill or buying healthy food for the family. So later on, Jim Cooper, who's the president and CEO of United Ways of the Pacific Northwest, you'll have an opportunity to put yourselves in the shoes of Alice families. So this slide right here, the true extent of hardship here in Pierce County. So you see 9% of the households in Pierce County are in poverty. That's about 34,000 households based on the 2024 census. Plus 28% are Alice households. Those are the households that are living below the Alice threshold. That's about 100,000 households. So we've got 37% of the households below the Alice threshold here in Pierce County, and that's about 134,000 households. So again, pretty staggering. And it's something that here at United Way we're always paying attention to and working with our partners in community. So the demographics of the hardships. Groups with the highest rate include African American, Black. Here in Pierce County, that's 49% of the Black household in Pierce County are Alice. The under 25 household, of the households that are under 25, 55% of those households are Alice. And Dr. Hoops talked about seniors. That's the fastest growing population of Alice households. Here in Pierce County, the households that are 65 and plus are 47%. 47% of those households are Alice. And then the single female-headed households with children at the highest. Those households, 71% of the single female-headed households are Alice. Single male-headed households are also growing as well, and that's at 53% of the single male-headed households are Alice. So this next slide, is just another way, and Dr. Hoops showed for Washington State. This is Pierce County. So you can see I just mentioned the 134,000 households. Back in the 2023 census, it was 124 households were Alice or below the Alice threshold. And so you can see, poverty staying pretty steady, but the Alice households, Alice families are continuing to grow as wages struggle to keep up with the rising costs of everyday needs. So snapshot of Washington counties. You can see here the percentage of struggling households. Kitsap at 30%. Pacific County is at the highest. And then if you look at the next slide, this is specific to Pierce County. So in Pierce County, and this is based on census subdivision, you can break it out by zip codes as well as by census tracts. So looking at it by census subdivision here in Pierce County, Buckley is the lowest at 22% of the households being Alice, and then the Fort Lewis, DuPont area at 50% of those households are below the Alice threshold, and Tacoma is in the upper 30s, 30, and some zip codes in Tacoma, for instance, are into the 40% of those households are Alice. So why is Alice Alice? There's lots of factors that impact families to be able to afford, again, the basics. There are some barriers just in our communities that keep Alice trapped, but there's that mismatch between ever-increasing cost of expenses and the wages just aren't keeping up. So the household survival budget here, if you look at the 2 adults, 2 children in childcare, for instance, $127,000 a year is what they need to make just to cover the basic. This doesn't even touch if there's an emergency in the family. The household stability budget, so that same family, and I don't have that chart up, but I'm going to make sure you get all the links to this information. It's $184,000 a year for 2 adults, 2 children in childcare. Just to take a minute just to imagine that. And then given that 37% of the households here in Pierce County are struggling to make ends meet. So this next slide, the hidden story behind inflation. So, we already know that Alice families can't afford the cost of basics, and those basics keep climbing. And the primary measure of inflation is the Consumer Price Index, which tracks more than 200 categories of goods and services, including housing, transportation, groceries, and luxury items. So from 2007 to 2024, that increased by more than 50%. But Alice households, and Dr. Hoops talked about the Alice Essentials Index, aren't buying, designer watches or designer handbags. Alice budgets is focused on basics, and we see that time and time again. So when you strip out all the luxuries that people might buy and focus on what people have to buy, we get the Alice Essentials Index. And you can see that that went up over 70% in the state of Washington. And this is important because hourly wages and government assistance aren't keeping up with the rising cost of basics. So I'll touch on these briefly, and there are, Dr. Hoops did talk about doing more in-depth research on just the labor market. So, when you think about working hard, Alice families are getting up every day, they're working hard, they're working, many of them, more than one job, and hard work should build opportunity. And, again, I can't emphasize this enough. Alice families are just trying to keep a roof over their head. They're just trying to make sure that they have the basics. And so you can see here the Washington sectors with the highest share of workers in financial hardship. And then more than 1/4 of the workers in Washington's 20 most common jobs couldn't make ends meet. That's 27%. And so here's just a quote from an Alice family. It's definitely been difficult. I have a lot of debt, medical bills that we need to pay. So definitely every single little bit helps. And despite the hardships that Alice families continue to face, there are a lot of stories, and there are bright spots. And for us at United Way, and so many of you on the line, and we partner with, partnerships are so key. So I'm going to turn it over now to one of our probably strongest partnerships, Katie Condit, who is the CEO of Workforce Central, and she's going to talk a little bit about our partnership and how Workforce Central is leaning into Alice. Katie.
Thanks, Donna. It is such an honor to partner with United Way in this work, and also with so many of you on this call. Gosh, I could list such incredible, promising practices that everyone is working on in this realm. So I'm just going to talk for a few minutes about Alice in the workplace and some of the work we're doing with United Way and others. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention that one of the biggest barriers for Alice in the workplace is what has been commonly referred to as the benefits cliff. And I would be remiss if I did not say that we have hundreds of workers every single week in Pierce County who are deciding between taking a raise or taking a better paying job and losing their benefits. We have hundreds of workers every week who are not taking a raise or a better paid job because they will lose their benefits. And that cost benefit ratio doesn't play out for them and their families. And so I think we need, as a country, as a state, and locally, to just continue to take a really hard look at what benefits look like and mean, and how we design them in a way that allows people to advance into good jobs. And we also can't talk about Alice in the workplace without talking about equity and inequity and the systemic barriers that continue to exist for communities in our region. Don, I was really grateful you talked about demographics and lived experience, and particularly race and gender, and how disproportionately Alice is communities of color. And when we pair that with that sector workforce data, what we know in Pierce County is occupation segregation exists. So we can look at jobs that pay closer to Alice wages, and we can see that the majority of those jobs are held by, again, women, people of color, people with disabilities, but people who have faced systemic barriers for hundreds of years in our country. And that it matters so much to tell that story. And it matters when we think about things that are working. And the first thing I would say is using this Alice data. We partner with United Way to use this data to prioritize investments and prioritize strategies. I hope we can all be doing that, because when we lift Alice, we're lifting all boats. And so using the data is something that works. I will also just say good jobs. Good jobs work. Good jobs, good wages. That's what works in supporting Alice families. And so the more our region can be strategic in growing and building good jobs, that probably goes without saying, but it's critical to keep at the forefront. We've all seen real incredible success and movement around partnerships for wealth building. And so we work with United Way on a project funded by Department of Commerce that actually provides matched savings accounts for Alice families. And so people who are working towards advancing in their career can invest in their savings, and that investment is then matched. And we've seen people without cars be able to purchase their first car in over 10 years, be able to put down payments down on houses, be able to pay off debt, be able to raise their credit score through these initiatives. And I mean, if that's not wealth building and equity building, I don't know what is. And that's been a really strong work from United Way. In workforce, we know earn while you learn works. The apprenticeship, the registered quality apprenticeship model works, getting young people and into experiences where they're paid to learn through our community and technical colleges, through other training programs. It matters and it works, and it's happening here. Access to post-secondary education and training, the data still demonstrate that getting some training or education after high school increases earnings exponentially, and that includes apprenticeships. And we have some incredible work happening with our local college partners and others to make sure people have access to those pathways. Businesses are supporting childcare in some really unique ways. Childcare has been a barrier we've been talking about for years. Larger businesses are opening childcares for their staff. Our labor partners, and Nathan's on the call, are opening a childcare center on the east side of Tacoma for their workers. Like cross-sector investment in childcare locally is working. I'll say, we do need a policy environment that allows small businesses to thrive so they can grow good jobs. Small and medium-sized local businesses in our region want to support Alice as well, and can be and are, I think, really good partners in this work. And so I'm excited to share that Workforce Central and United Way are hosting a business summit focused on Alice to have conversations and plan strategically with our local employers to say, what do you need to better support your Alice workers? And how do we design strategies to help your business grow while growing wages and opportunities to quality jobs? And so those are just some of the ways we partner, some of the ways you all are doing incredible work. But I think it comes back to recognizing and amplifying Alice. I imagine many of people on this call are Alice. Alice is who we work with. It's who we talk to. It's who we live with. And bringing dignity to that space as opposed to othering is really important in the workplace. It's really important in our communities. And I think through some of these partnerships with United Way, with your leadership and others, where we have opportunity in Pierce County to change the game. So I appreciate the chance to partner with all of you, and the time to talk just briefly about Alice in the workplace and our partnership, Donna. So I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Katie. Yes, truly a strong partnership. And, like Katie mentioned, there's so many of you on the Zoom call today that we also partner with. And I think there's just so many opportunities for us to make a difference for Alice families in our community. So now, there's like I mentioned, there's lots of bright spots. So next, we're going to take a moment to listen to the voice of Alice.
I'm born and raised in Gig Harbor, Washington, and I uprooted my entire life on a scholarship to go to college in southern Utah. My mom, she's chronically ill, and so I moved back to be able to take care of her, only to discover that rent prices were almost 2 times the rent they were in Utah. I had 5 jobs. My life revolved around work, and it still wasn't enough. Eventually it came to the point where I was choosing between having to pay for my electricity when my lights went out and food. After consistently falling behind over and over and over again, I called 211. They guided me towards vital resources that got me back on my feet. The resource like rental assistance, helping me pay my utility bills, and teaching me how to stay ahead of things, even giving me pivotal skills to allow me to get better employment so that way I can make the money to keep me afloat. It changed my life, which brings me here today as a financial coach for students in Pierce County. I'm able to look at people who are just like me and help them come up with the tools and resources that they need to become successful and self-sufficient.
I'm so glad we were able to see that video today. As Donna mentioned earlier, you're now all going to have an opportunity to put yourself in the shoes of an Alice family and experience a taste of what it's like to have to make those types of choices through United for Alice's new Alice Impossible Choices activity. We now get to turn our meeting over to the one and the only Jim Cooper, the president and CEO of the United Ways of the Pacific Northwest, and Elena Fridley, who are going to walk us through this activity. Jim, it's all over to you.
Hi, Chris. Thank you very much. And hello, everyone. Elena couldn't be with me this morning because our organization is fully immersed in disaster response in Washington and in Oregon right now. And we've been doing a lot of things to help out in Spokane. So I'm going to do it myself, and it should be wonderful and a good experience for you. So, Chris, I'm going to go ahead and take over the share. Can you pull down your deck? Ah, perfect. All right, did that share well? You can see it? Okay, wonderful. All right, so you've learned a little bit about ALICE already, but when we say ALICE, which stands again for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed, we want you to picture the many individuals that you interact with on a daily basis. ALICE workers are typically teachers, home health aides, hairdressers, baristas, bus drivers, mechanics, postal workers, paramedics, store clerks, and other critical but lower wage workers who often face impossible choices in everyday life. Many of us have been or are currently Alice and know all too well the impossible choices they can bring. So the impossible choices scenario we have for you today may open your eyes to the reality of Alice. We're going to use a virtual polling tool to take you through a series of budget scenarios and impossible choices that an Alice family faces every month. If at any point you don't feel comfortable participating, we encourage you to pause for as long as you need. So if you haven't done so already, you can either scan the QR code or you can go to menti.com and enter this code. Chris, can you write down this code for me in case anyone in the chat is having trouble with it after I leave this slide? And that would be wonderful. We'll try and get a few more people in here. We've got about a third of you so far. It'd be great if we could have all of the folks in the room, for the most part, join the Menti. You can find, once it opens up, it'll give you a chance to pop a like, and you should see your like go across the screen. We're about half the folks are in the room now. Look at that, all those likes. Donna and Katie and Chris got you all warmed up, so that's wonderful. I came directly from a meeting where I'm coordinating donations for Spokane for the State Emergency Operations Center. And so I'm really happy that the presentation has been going so well so far. Alice needs us right now, so the more people that know about it, the better. So give it just another minute. I've got about 2/3 of the group in the Menti. It seems to have stabilized. Okay, to get us started, let's think about the relationship between wages and basic expenses. As we all know, the cost of living varies greatly throughout the country, but which of the locations listed here do you think has the highest cost of living? Use your phone to select from Chicago, Seattle, Trenton, Orlando, El Paso, or Baltimore. And if you didn't get in the Menti, Chris can help you out in the chat with the information to log in. Got almost everyone voting. About 10 more. Hopefully you all get this right. Looks like we are. Seattle is the correct answer. So right in our backyard, and we all know that that drives the costs in all of Pierce County as well. So the correct answer was Seattle, where the minimum cost of basics, or what we call the household survival budget, is $98,268. This is for a family of 4 with 2 adults, a preschooler, and an infant. The lowest of these locations is El Paso, Texas. Get this, $64,980 for that same family of 4 to survive. Now let's take a look at wages. One of the most common jobs in the country is retail sales, but more than a third of retail salespeople in the U.S. struggle to afford basics. We want to know which of these states offers the highest hourly wage for retail salespeople. Again, use your phone and choose Georgia, Indiana, Oregon, Louisiana, Kansas, or Maine. Give it just another few seconds. See how you all are doing. People know the answer. That's great. So Oregon is the one. The correct answer is Oregon at $15.96 per hour. The lowest wage for retail salespeople is Louisiana at $12.66 per hour. Now that we've talked a little about expenses and wages, let's move on to our impossible choices scenario. For this experience, every person in the room is part of a family of 4. Along with your partner, you represent 2 Alice occupations. One of you is a customer service representative, the other is a delivery driver. You have 2 children, one who's in childcare and the other who's in a public preschool. Together, you make $87,144 per year, which comes to $7,262 a month. As you can see, this Alice family of 4 will spend $5,391 of that budget in Washington to cover housing, childcare, transportation, healthcare, technology, and taxes. Leaving $1,871 to take care of the remaining monthly expenses and anything else that comes up. So let's see how that money gets spent. It's the first week of the month and there's a choice to make. Unfortunately, your infant was sick and your childcare center will not allow them to return tomorrow. You either need to find a last-minute babysitter that will cost you $100 for the day, or you will lose $125 for a day's work since your hourly job has no paid time off. Which luckily in Washington, we have some protection for that. Before you make the choice, let's talk about the other expenses that you have this week. You go grocery shopping, which costs you $350. Plus, your eldest child comes home from school and tells you about an upcoming class trip, which is $20 per child. Keep that in mind as you go to the quiz. You can put in the code if you missed the first time to help make this family's decision. Vote now on either paying the babysitter $100 or taking off a day and losing $125. Tough choice. Okay, so 65% of you say hire the babysitter. The grocery bill and the field trip leave you with $1,501. And when we subtract $100 for the last minute babysitter, we're down to $1,401 for the rest of the month. And now it's week 2. It's your toddler's 4th birthday, and they're currently in love with panda bears. You want to invite a few friends over and keep the cost to a minimum with a homemade panda cake, some chips and games, and a candy goodie bag. But you also are due for a refill of your prescription medication, an expense you pay out of pocket. The party will cost $50 for 5 of their friends, while your medication refill would cost $100. You know you probably can't afford both. Either you throw your little one the party they're so excited about and go without your medication for now, which could impact your health later, or you pay for the refill and risk disappointing your toddler. While you're considering this, you're also headed back to the grocery store and you need a couple higher ticket items. You all know this month, right? When you need the laundry detergent and the shampoo that cost more than the other things you normally buy. And so your weekly grocery bill is $375. And you have an unexpected expense when your colleague asks you to chip in $15 to support a meal train for a coworker who is recovering from a serious illness. So now vote your choice. Are you going to do the panda party or refill your medication? So 80% of you said the medication. So the grocery bill and the meal train totaled $390. And when we also subtract $100 for the medication, that leaves you about $900 to $950 for the second half of the month. Now we'll get into week 3 of our Alice budget. Your partner has decided to enroll in an educational program that will improve their chances for a promotion, and their job will cover the tuition. However, you need to buy the course book, which costs $150. But winter has hit in your area pretty hard, and your landlord keeps putting off a repair to the heating system in your apartment. So you're thinking about buying some space heaters, which would cost $120. Which do you choose? You want to support this opportunity for your partner, but you also want your family, especially your kids, to be warm during the cold winter months. You're also back at the grocery store where another bill of $350, and you have to pay an unexpected $35 bank fee due to an accidental overdraft of your checking account. With these in mind, vote now for either the course book or the space heaters. So 62% said the textbook, and you're gonna be sleeping with your kids to keep them warm. So there goes another 385 out of your budget for the grocery bill and the bank fee. Plus you chose the space heaters. With 1 week left, you're down to about $450 or less to make it through the month. It's week 4, and it's time to spend another $350 on groceries, leaving you with roughly $100 for any other expenses that might arise this final week of the month. Like $300 to replace your broken car windshield from a storm that just hit your area, $250 for a cracked tooth not covered by the dental plan, or $150 for a flat tire you received coming home from work. Let's just say we have a flat tire and only $100 left. How would you cover the remaining $50? So I want to ask you to virtually or in person raise your hand if you would dip into your savings. Okay. Keep your hands up and then add them if you would put $50 on a credit card. Or reach out to a family member or a friend for help. Raise your hand if you would do that. So based on what I see on Zoom, most of the hands are raised. And here's what you need to know. Earning wages that doesn't cover basic expenses, Alice workers and families don't typically have these options. Many Alice families do not have savings for an emergency since all their income is used for bills. Many Alice families have already maxed out their credit cards, and many Alice families don't have friends or relatives they can lean on since these loved ones are often struggling just as much as they are. And suppose instead of the flat tire, it was the cracked tooth. Imagine being so proud you're able to get health insurance at work, and then after struggling to pay the premiums, you find out like something like this isn't even covered. Alice works so hard day in and day out, and still they can't seem to get ahead. As you are going through this activity, watching your budget deplete with each impossible choice and unexpected expense, how did you feel? Once again, please use the Mentimeter code to add one word or short phrase to the word cloud. And you can add multiple here. So if you have a few emotions from this exercise, please add them in. Stressed, frustrated, depressed, hopeful, angry, anxious, deflated, tired, emotionally exhausted, embarrassed, insecure, powerless, helpless, stressed, angry, can't get ahead, lost, powerless, scared, normal, right? A lot of people go through this decision-making process. Does anyone want to unmute and talk about how they felt making these decisions for a month? Just one or two people?
They won't be unable to mute themselves, Jim, but they can certainly raise their hand again, and we can unmute them at that point.
Okay.
So we just have a new hand. Norman, just raise their hand. Norman, we'll go ahead and ask you to unmute and go ahead.
Go ahead, Norman. What do you think?
Oop, I'm trying to get them to unmute. One second.
Oh, he can't unmute, he says.
Yeah.
Okay.
For some reason, it's not letting me unmute him.
That's okay. There's a big crowd, so.
I got it.
There we
Okay.
To tell you the truth, this is real life situation. Until my wife and I got promoted, got better jobs. I'm working at a nonprofit. I have two little ones, both of them in daycare. I have an older son. I mean, we had to forego birthday presents. We had to make tough decisions on Christmas and use resources. I mean, it's kind of funny when you see your clients where you're getting the resources too. I mean, the truth is, tough decisions have to be made every day. And it's almost, I would say, relieving, but I feel guilty now that I got promoted. My wife got promoted. Our income has gone up, so we don't have to make those tough choices. But I work in a community where you see your coworkers make these tough choices. You see other people. It is so stressed, but the most part of the embarrassment to actually have to use the services that you're helping your clients with. And God, it makes me do my job better. But the truth of the matter is, we shouldn't have to go through this. And there's so many people that I won't say don't care. What I would say is they just don't know.
Yeah.
And if they don't know after a while, it's a personal choice. So I would
Thank you,
say
Norman.
it's scary.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think if we asked all of you to answer that question, you would all have a personal story and experience with those kinds of decisions. And I think even people with more means have decision-making anxiety. And when you add the stress of not having enough to get the basic needs met, it just amplifies it. So ask yourself this: if this activity was your real life, would you second guess your decisions? Would you lie awake at night wondering if you should have skipped the birthday party or skimped on your own meals to cut down on costs? And what if something more serious had happened, or if your partner lost their job, or your child had an accident and was in the hospital for a week or longer? On the other hand, not every expense is unexpected. You know your medication is due for a refill soon, or that your heating system's been broken for some time, and you'll need to find your own way to solve for that. You know these expenses are coming. You're just not sure how you're going to pay for it all. These are the scenarios that make choices impossible when we struggle with wages that don't cover basic expenses. And so my last slide is just a call to action. So I want to ask all of you, to Norman's point, to go and tell 5 people in the next couple days about Alice, and that you learned that almost 40% of Washingtonians are struggling to get by on any given day. And in some communities and some populations, that can be 80 or 100% of our single female headed households. And we need to get the word out. We need people to understand that the federal poverty line and the consumer price index are outright lies. And we need to help have them have the Alice information in front of them so they can make informed decisions about benefits or community supports for our lower income population. And so tell your neighbors, tell your family, tell your friend, tell your clergy, tell your legislators, tell your city council members, your PUD commissioners, and let them know, those county commissioners and county council members, let them know what the data is like in their community. And if you go to the Alice website, there's actually a legislative and congressional district tool, so you can pull up the Alice population by congressional district or legislative district and show it directly to your member that's representing you. This is your district. This is what people are dealing with in your district. Food costs as much as housing and childcare. And we've got to get ahead of that. And it's going to take the whole community participating and talking about it to do it. So thank you, Chris, and thank you, the United Way of Pierce County, for putting this on. And we really look forward to hearing about your stories about what you told people about Alice. And I'll just do a quick plug here. Thank you for all of our sponsors of the Alice Project in Washington State. Avista, BECU, Go West, Idaho Community Foundation, Oregon Community Foundation, the Ford Family Foundation, WSECU, the Whatcom Community Foundation, and a myriad of our local United Ways around the region, just stepping up and helping out to make sure that we have this essential data in our community.
Thank you so much, Jim. And now, Donna, back over to you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Jim. That's the first time I've gone through that exercise, and so that was it really does make you stop and pause. So as we start to wind down, we want to make sure that there's time for questions. But one of the things that I'd like to do is just to highlight some of the things that we're doing at United Way that are helping to move Alice families, not just to self-sufficiency, but to so that they're thriving in our community. You know, we have a lot of partners, as I've mentioned earlier. So we're investing in those basic needs with several of our agencies, really looking at how do they help their clients move from a place of crisis to be stable, to self-sufficiency and beyond. We have our Access Peers. We were at one point, there were seven 211 call centers throughout the state. They've consolidated into one. And what we did is we transitioned into a resource navigation hub called Access Peers, and really focusing and leaning in on how do you help individuals navigate the myriad of services that are out there, from transportation to workforce development, behavioral health, basic needs, and housing. We are still, to a small degree, we're going to be doing our cash assistance, our guaranteed income, where we're putting cash in the hands of Alice families. Again, working 2 and 3 jobs, what $500 a month does to support those families makes a huge difference. And then working our Centers for Working Families, where we have 6 sites throughout the county, helping individuals improve their income, decrease debt, and improve credit scores. You heard earlier from Katie with Workforce Central. We continue to work with them on a match savings program and working with their club. We have a financial coach there, Kanan, who I think is still on the Zoom call, but providing support and assistance so that individuals can save to enhance their business, for a car, for putting a down payment on our home, or decreasing their debt. Some other partnerships, you heard the Charisma's story. She's a financial coach at Tacoma Community College working with students. And then, the other things that we are doing is really advocating. And Jim talked about this. We use that legislative tool as well so that we can show our legislators, this is what your area looks like. These are the Alice families in the communities that you serve. So, really continuing to encourage individuals. You can go to the next slide. We all, at the end of the day, we all have a role to play, right? We all have a role to play where we can support Alice families. And together, with peers across the Alice network, we're working to build a nation where Alice families not only have enough income to afford basics, but also can save and invest for the future. We showed you the survival budget. They can't save for the future on those wages, and so we really do want a future where Alice can save and invest. Community members, what things that you can do is to raise awareness on social media. Jim, challenge all of us to tell 5 individuals about Alice. Employers can create strategies that support a well-being and retention of Alice workers. We are going to be looking at doing a pilot called Alice, United for Alice at Work, where we'll be reaching out to companies to see if you're interested in having your C-suite or HR professionals participate in this, where it provides you additional resources to help your employees. So again, we've put a lot of links in the chat. Visit the United for Alice site, the United, you can also go onto the United Way Pierce County link that I added to the chat to get links to all of the information that we've talked about today. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions and answers. And I know Stephanie is still on, and Jim, and so who has the first question?
If you have questions, please use the raise hand function in Zoom, or put it, you have a question in chat and we can read that question from the chat as well. No questions as of yet, Donna. You may have covered everything between Jim, Stephanie, and yourself and Katie.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. There's a question from Norman. Norman, go ahead.
Would you put in the chat how you set up IDA programs, individual development accounts for a match savings, so that way other programs can potentially look into setting up such a program? I think it's an incredible idea. Great job.
Yes, you know what, Norman, I don't know if one of my staff is on the line, but we'll get back to you and give you that information. Yeah, it really is an incredible opportunity where we have been involved with the Department of Commerce last year, and then this year continuing to work with Workforce Central, where someone can save up to $10,000 and get that matched.
Donna, in the chat, we do have a few questions.
Yes.
One was, what's the best way to get the resources out to Alice folks?
Yes. Well, I mean, part of it is contacting Access Peers. You can, if one of my staff can put the information on how to reach out to Access Peers in the chat, that would be great. 211 is still out there. You can always call 211, but specific to Pierce County, reaching out to Access Peers, then they can connect you to all of the different resources.
Another question, Donna, is will people be able to download this event so they can show it to others?
You know what? I think we will this is usually made available. It'll be on our website. I think it takes us a minute, but we'll be able to get it on our website. Yes. And we can make the PowerPoint deck available as well.
And we had a question about rent assistance, which I think somebody put the answer in the chat already for Access Pierce County on that. So hopefully that helps answer your question. We also have another question. Is your info in public schools and libraries?
You know what? That's a good question, Steph. I don't think so. Stephanie might be able to answer that question for us. I don't think that there is.
So many libraries do have the Alice data, and you can certainly access it on library computers. And something that we're working on is trying to make like a teaching toolkit available to schools to help incorporate some of the Alice measures and approach into, an economics course or a state local government or kind of a understanding course. So we're working on some funding for that, and if anybody here has got some ideas, would love your participation, because we would like to make it with input from high school teachers and such. But I do want to give a plug for libraries. They are so important for Alice, and they've been great partners for Alice during disasters, during where to get informations on getting jobs, on getting FEMA assistance, all kinds of things. So definitely reach out to your libraries and make sure they are well versed in Alice, because they already do a lot.
Yeah, and I think getting the word out, because I mean, if you have a computer, you can access the data. So I think something that we can do is to make sure that all of these entities are aware. And there was another question, and I can't roll up
There was
It's
a question
always
about,
appears zip codes. Yes. And the one of the links that I sent at the top of the page, I think it was the Washington page, is a spreadsheet, and you can go in and look up zip codes for your area.
And Donna, I'm adding in the
thanks,
chat
Stephanie, for putting that in there.
county
Yeah.
report page and dig down and get your zip codes and also map them.
We also have a question, Donna. Since United Way of Thurston County closed, where can Thurston County people go for help?
You know what, yes, and I have been, you know what, that's a really good question. We have been talking with folks down there to see what, issues and needs are. You can still call 211. So that's one place that you can go to get assistance. But we're working on it. We're working to see how we might be able to help residents that are in Thurston County get access to services. But at this point, contacting 211 is still the best option for Thurston County. You may also want to contact the Community Foundation down in Thurston County as well.
Donna, we have a question from one of the Amandas. Of the original goal to move 15,000 families out of Alice, how many have actually been helped?
Yes, that we're at 14,800, and that's over, the 8 years of individuals moving from a place of crisis to self-sufficient towards self-sufficiency.
Are there any other questions from anybody this morning? We have a question from Angie. What advice do you have in helping folks navigate services, as often time constraints and work schedules often make it difficult to access services available?
Oh, well, you know what? I know that can be a challenge because, people have, it's not a 9 to 5. You might need services after that, right? So one of the things you can do is you can call Access Peers after hours, and if it's an emergency, I think you can be directed, and one of my staff can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But there's also, you can text. So you can text and someone can get back to you. If you don't have time during the workday to call, you can always text the Access Peers, and someone can get back to you with the information that you need. It is challenging. And one of the things, that we've talked about here is how can we expand the hours? But expanding the hours means you need more resources to be able to do that. But leaving messages, someone would get back in touch with you.
I think that might be the end of our, pardon me, I think that might be the end of our questions. Oh, wait, we have one last one that came in. Thanks so much for this great presentation. Is info available for industry sector and occupation at the county level or just state?
I believe.
So that is available at the state level.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the county level data for employment and occupation is just not the same quality as it is at the state level. But if you have access to some extra data, please reach out. We'll see what we can do.
And Gideon, we have a question about how can you access help on there, and that number, that 211 number. And I also want to say that there's one other number that was the 1-800-572-HELP, which is 1-800-572-4357, are your best resources to reach out to for that.
And if you're in Tacoma, I would contact the Tacoma Housing Authority as well. If you're not in Tacoma, but in Pierce County, you can reach out to the Pierce County Housing Authority.
All right.
Okay.
Donna, I think that's the end of our questions.
Wonderful. Well, great. Well, let's see. Okay, Jim, I think, or not Jim, Chris, I think it's back to you.
I think it is. And I want to thank both Nath, Dr. Hoops, Jim, and Katie for participating today, and for Donna for diving into the data. And thank you all for joining us today, too, for the Alice Town Hall. We hope that this Alice report has provided you all with a clearer picture of the hardships that Alice families continue to face and the bright spots that are ensuring that Alice has a brighter future. Seeing that 14,000 number was a fantastic thing today. Donna and Dr. Hoops are going to stay on the meeting for just a few moments if you have additional questions, but for the most part, thank you all. Have a wonderful weekend. Please stay cool today and tomorrow as we're into the heat of the 90s. Thank you all for being here today. And those of you who are still in the room, if you do have a question for Donna or Dr. Hoops, please just use that raise hand function and we will get that question answered for you to the best of our ability. We'll stay open for just another moment or two to see if there are any of those last minute questions. Donna and Stephanie, I think with that, we probably will say thank you all for being here today. Once again, thank you to both of you. And for those still in the room, we appreciate you being here and we hope that we will see you again for next year's Alice Town Hall. Thank you all so much
Great.
and enjoy your day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. What a great town hall.
Yes. Thank you, Stephanie. Always appreciate you. And Jim, I don't know if Jim is probably back helping with the fires, which are just devastating.
I think we lost everybody else except
Okay.
for our few
All
Amandas and
right.
Andy's in the room.
I know, really.
All right, I will go ahead and end the meeting. We'll talk
Okay,
to you all again
great.
soon. Always good to
Thank
see you,
you.
Dr. Hoops.
Okay. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye-bye.